How did you launch him 80 feet in the air?
You told me to boat flip him!
I didn't tell you to launch him 78 feet in the air.
I flipped him in the boat, didn't I?
Send it to the moon.
I sent it! You said boat flip him!
Oh, yeah.
Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never, disappointed out here because I don't expect anything, because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
On my property, you didn't win in my yard.
Wait.
All of you.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good morning, everyone. How is everyone doing today?
Let's get another applause.
In there, because this has been absolutely insane.
Thank you guys so much for yesterday. I think we had over 600 people viewing that first live stream in the morning. And I was telling Jared yesterday, it's always that perfect mix. Last year we had about 200 to 300 people, but I think because of all the snow and it being cold, there was a lot more people that just stayed home, and it's just the perfect mix there. So thank you so much for this. Sorry that we're running a little bit late today. Literally, it was a train that we got caught behind. That was a freaking nightmare. I set everything behind a little bit, but we're going to have a really good show today. We hit a lot of cool booths. We're trying to space it out a little bit more so we can do more meet and greets, then we can hit all the booths up, and we can get some cool interviews in before things get crowded here. So, because generally speaking, Saturdays are the crazy day. We have a really cool guest to kind of start out everything. Please let me know before we get started here, how does the audio sound? I always want to make sure that we got the audio quality as tuned as possible here. And then this thing will be re-uploaded in the first week of February. It'll be re-uploaded just as a podcast episode, all these interviews, and then the audio will be 100% crispy and clean. So without further ado, let me pull this bad boy up onto the stage here. We got a guy who you probably seen him around. You've seen him on Instagram. You've seen him on Woods and Water. He's had a really cool career within the DMV, the Virginia, Maryland area, and we got a really cool program to talk about. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, for the people that don't know your story, let's get a little background. How did you get into fishing and really into woods and water and everything?
So, getting into fishing, so I grew up in Pennsylvania, kind of the middle of nowhere.
Really?
Yeah, about an hour north of Penn State. So, kind of or my mom is really, the one who got me into it as far as doing some trout fishing and some bass fishing and things like that. So that's really kind of the beginning. I moved to Virginia in 2010, so I've been here since then. Kind of got into the bass scene, did a little bit of some club stuff, and then I kind of got into chasing the citation fish and things like that. I kind of just fell into that. So I got into woods and water because I think it was probably 2016 or 2017. I just hooked up the boat. I went to Southwest Virginia. I'd never been down there. I went to this little place called Laurel Bed Lake and hit South Holston, and then we hit Claytor on the way back. And Chris McCotter had just kind of reached out to me because I've been posting the things on there and whatnot, and he was like, "Hey, I'd really like to have you write an article on the trip and stuff like that." So I was like, "All right." So then I kind of just did that, and then ever since then, just been kind of writing for the magazine, do their adventure editing and things like that. So. And that kind of led more into what's going on with the citation program and stuff like that.
So, and this is what I love about the show is all the side tangents. South Holston, what is that place like? I've heard legends of that place.
I went. It was the middle of November, so it was we drawn down.
Okay.
We pulled up, it was probably 20 or 30 foot low, but it's a really pretty place. It's one of the prettiest places I've been, and I still remember we launched the boat, so there's nothing there. I didn't really have any gas in my boat. And I was like, oh, maybe we can find some gas. And then we were just spent the day going up and down the lake. And it was probably halfway through the day, we hadn't even caught a fish. And then I ended up
you could
catching a really big smallmouth, probably close to 5 pounds. So I was like, oh, this place is awesome. And then right at the end of the day, we got on some good fish. But it's a really pretty place. It's just super far away. Even for me in Charlottesville, it's probably 4 or 5 hours. So
Virginia's a weird looking angular state and how many directions, because I don't know, what is the most central place you could live to hit all of Virginia lakes? Would it be Charlottesville?
I would say probably Richmond
area.
Richmond, Charlottesville, because Richmond really puts you you're only an hour and a half away from the Potomac, Bugs, you got the Chick River, the James River, and all that kind of stuff. But Charlottesville's not too bad, but Lake Anna's probably my home lake, and that's about an hour.
That's not bad.
And then everything else is about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And we got some small lakes around Charlottesville and other things like that. But if you want to get a big water, tournament stuff, like you're looking at like an hour and a half. So
What's that one like next to Charlottesville? That one super long one.
maybe like the Ravana like reservoir,
Yeah,
probably.
Ravana Sandy or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Ravana Reservoir, because it's like a super long, it's kind of like a dam lake.
Yeah.
And then like to get to like Sandy and Briery, that's about an hour and a half too, like for me. So I do like to go to Briery a lot. So
Is Briery still a thing? Because I know, like, it's almost like when people talk about Kerr, they reminisce about, oh, you go to the bushes, you catch 30 pounds.
Right.
But every time I'm there, it's never in the bushes. And everyone talks about Briery Creek. It's like, you just go there, it's like Fork, basically. You catch, 10-pounders left and right. Can you still catch fish out of there? Was that pounded? Is it still good? Or
it's still good. So I would say that like it's probably like not as good. The same thing that I've heard about like in the heyday. Like I think there used to be like a lot of grass. But I would say like Briery, as far as it's still like really good fishing, and like I would say like your average fish there is probably like a 2 or 3 pounder, like that's like on the small end, and then like a 4 or 5 pounder there's like nothing at all. I mean,
Holy
so
crap.
it's like it's pretty good, but I mean like obviously they got like all like the standing like timber and things like that, so it makes it kind of hard. But we actually just went there. Me and my buddy Cameron went there beginning of January, and we did some crappie fishing, and the crappie fishing was like really good. We caught some like really nice fish. He caught a citation and stuff like that. So I really like to go in the summer because the fish will be schooling there and like chasing shad and stuff like that. So that's kind of like my favorite time of the year to go there. But it's really good. It's definitely worth like checking out.
And the citation program really, we're going to segue into that too. How did that become a thing? Was it just natural, like you caught a couple of citations and it became a thing, or was that like on a Tuesday 5 years ago, you're like, I want to set out and do this?
So like it definitely like started off like you like said in the beginning, like because mostly like I was just fishing like for bass, and then I probably caught the first 6 or 7 like citation species like just going like for bass. Like my first citation was a chain pickerel that I caught at Hunting Run on Cinco.
Really?
So, and then I think like the second one that I caught was actually a walleye at Lake Orange, which is kind of crazy because walleye's kind of hard to get, and Lake Orange they do get stocked with walleye, but it was like the first walleye I ever caught, and it was like 26 inches or something like that. So it was like a giant walleye. And
did you purposely try to catch so Cinco on a pickerel? Probably not like you were trying to go for it, but the walleye, was that actually you were trying to catch that?
No, like I was actually throwing like a jerk bait just for bass, and then that's probably about how the first, I'd say like 6, 7, or 8 went, because like I would just like catch like stuff like bass fishing, like yellow perch, white perch, got the pickerel, got the bass, and then like once I started to get into like 7 or 8, like that's when I kind of was like, okay, like I kind of want to start doing this, like start to target them like specifically and things like that. So once I got to like, so the citation program, like every 5 species that you get, like you get like a master level like angler. So like if you get 5, like your 5 species, like you get like a master level 1, 10, 15, 20. Okay. So once I got to like close to 10, like that's when I really wanted to get to 20, because like I was telling you before, like only less than 10 people had got to 20. Like there's been a few guys over the last couple of years that have got to it. Before there was only like 4 or 5, so now it's like right under.
So at this point in the story, 10. How many you have the pickerel, you have the walleye.
Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, so they started off with like the pickerel, the walleye, the yellow perch, the white perch.
How'd you get the yellow and white perch?
Just bass fishing. Like the yellow perch was on. I still remember like like the yellow perch was on a blade bait. It was at Lake Holiday, up in northern like Virginia.
Really?
And then like the white perch was at Lake Monticello, which is like right outside of Charlottesville. And then the largemouth bass came, and then I don't remember like where like 6 and 10 was. I remember like the 10th fish I think it was a red ear sunfish. I went with my buddy Steven, who's like probably like the greatest Virginia angler as far as when it comes to like the citation stuff. We went down to the Suffolk Lakes. So that day I caught a red ear and a channel catfish, and then so that got me to 10. And then like I was saying that with Sam with Blue Ridge Muskie, I went out with him to catch the muskie because he's so good, and then I didn't really have like the gear and stuff like that. So he's the only person like where I was out like with a guide and caught like a citation. So
what specific species on your list? And at this point in the story, when you caught the muskie, that's 5, right? Or is
the
that
muskie probably put me close to 10.
Close to 10.
So, yeah.
How many species did you actually pursue, and they weren't like, oh, this is a cool accident?
Yeah. So I would say up to about 10 or 12 was just like accidental. But then like I said, like I started to really like focus on. So like I did catch and the other thing is too is so all the information is on like the Game and Inland Fisheries like website, as far as like when people submit the citations, like where they catch them and things like that. So that's a really good resource. because some of the fish really have like a window like where you have to go after them, like so getting the red ear and the channel catfish, and then I caught a white bass, which is I caught that down in the Hyco River. So like in the spring they come up out of like Bugs Island and stuff like that, because that's the other thing like with some of these fish too is like there's really only 1 or 2 places where you can catch them and things like that. So that is like when you kind of have to start like focusing on it, get like that time window and things like that. So, but then when I got the white bass, like I also, and that was, we were fishing for them, but we were using like swim baits and things like that. So it was just like essentially like bass fishing. But, so that day I caught the white bass and I caught a gar. So just like wild, like fishing for that. So some of that stuff.
How'd you catch a gar? Did you have to snag? Like, I mean, did you like foul hook it or you actually get it?
No, like it actually had bit it.
Holy
like
crap.
Or the same thing, throwing like the little like swim bait. And then like the trout. So like I've gotten a brook trout and a rainbow trout. So that was, both of those came at Cedar Creek, which is like a place in Southwest Virginia. So I would definitely say like a lot of it has been being like stubborn, like stubborn and lucky, because like with the like those trout, like me and my buddy Brian went the last like 2 years. It's like a 3-hour drive each way, and then like both the times it was like this time of year, so it's like freezing cold. So like you just got to go out there and just like do it. So like I have got lucky, and as far as some of the ones I've got, like I got on the first try, like you just went out like and it just happened to, like to catch them. But then like some of them, you know, like it was probably funny. Like one of the hardest ones was the crappie.
Really?
So yeah, because what I've found is, like I was saying, like with fishing like Lake Anna, there's just like not that many there. Like I probably caught 5,000 crappie like before like I caught like the first like citation. But then I realized like you gotta go to like the better waters and things like that. So
that's really fascinating. So, I mean, let's get to some questions here. I got so many questions there. Let's start with Jesse's in the chat. Audio a little bit better now. Okay, cool. Jess Kirk, is it true Aaron has never caught a small fish? This sounds like the most interesting man in the world stuff. We got Jesse again. And yeah, keep the comments flowing here. Let me check the old Instagram too. And StreamYard, could you please show the viewers and comments on StreamYard for Instagram? We got 20 people on Instagram. We got 20, so we got about 43. That's pretty good for this early in the morning. Let's keep it rolling in here with questions. When is Aaron's Black Book of Hot Spots being released? Jesse, get on down here. Get ask him these questions.
We gotta get the woods and water, and then because lots of times like those articles, I'll put them like in the articles and stuff like that. So
there you have it, guys.
Lots of the stuff.
We got Rebecca, Beaver Creek and the Ravina Reservoir in Charlottesville, okay, and Sandy River and Briery at Farmville, Lake Gordonsville, and Northeast River. But a kayak in the Rapidan from 29 at the Green Mills line down to Somerset. All are great places. Yep,
well, I would disagree
100%.
with Beaver Creek. You could fill Beaver Creek in with cement for all I care. So
why do you say that?
It's just like it's honestly like one of like the worst places I've ever fished. Like I don't know why it's like so bad. Like the fish are small. It's terrible. So, but or that's right outside of Crozet. So I have fished there.
And then right here with this one, we got a Mips drives a smallmouth crazy in the rivers, but a Rico in northern lakes. Lake Champlain smallies act like torpedoes after a Rico. I have witnessed it in whitecaps. No, Rebecca, 100% there. The smallmouth are just absolutely vivacious. I really feel like with a lot of these citations, there's two things. I think it's a cultural perspective of people just aren't into it. And the second is people don't realize they have a citation, honestly.
Well, like, yeah, like I definitely like agree with like as far as like especially like it's kind of interesting because I know like the game and inland fishery like really kind of use the citation program maybe to, like to monitor like how big like the fish are being caught in like certain lakes and things like that. But there's definitely like a lot of people that don't submit like the citations. Like like you said, like people either don't know, you do have to pay like $5 to submit it, and then you get like a certificate. And we can kind of talk about that, how the program's changed a little bit. But and then people like I know somebody who has caught a 10-pounder like at Sandy and has caught a bunch of citations, but they just don't turn them in because they don't want people to know. You know, so that's kind of how it is too. So you definitely have people that like don't know about it, but it is a good program. It's very interesting. But they did make a change in 2020. They made a change to the program where they kind of like split it. So like there was 25 species, like now there's 30. they kind of changed the program as far as like how they used to mail you those like certificates, and now you go online and you have to print them off. And I know like a lot of people are not really happy because they feel like you have to do the work, you're paying the money, and the certificate's not just quite as nice as it used to be. So
I wonder why that they're doing that, honestly.
that's a good question. Like I don't know.
Because you can market and promote that stuff and really hype that up. And if you made a really cool plaque, a wooden plaque, how much does that actually cost to do something like
exactly. And I think that's what they used to do, like back in the day. Like I think they actually did kind of like send you like a personalized to like each species and things like that. So like I definitely think they are missing an opportunity, like you said, to kind of promote the program, because it could be a little bit better. Because like you said, especially like if you're making the people pay for it, and then like you have to print like the stuff off, like that like doesn't sit well with me. And I think it doesn't sit well with a lot of other people too.
No, it shouldn't. And it's there's so many fun things you could do with that. Like I saw over at their booth, and Alex McCrickard, if you are coming in today, please let me know. Text me so we can get you on the show. I want to talk about this too. They're doing like
Alex. Alex is really good.
Yeah, Alex is really awesome. Huge shout out to, I had you on the show last year, and I got to go down to the Richmond headquarters and talk to you and your boss, by the way. Hopefully I get to him again as well. They're doing the 3 bass challenge as well, which I think is a cool idea. There's so many different things you can do. If you look at saltwater, you have like, the backwater challenge, which I think is a snook, redfish, tarpon. There's so many cool little challenges there. And I think people, like you said, would be more invested in that if you had some better incentive, a plaque, a trophy, something cool like that. And when you're talking about these citations programs, I think it's the exact same thing. If you're just going to get a pamphlet, you're like, meh, whatever. But if you made the award a little bit cooler, a little bit more renowned, people would be 100% in that.
Exactly.
And the other thing really is, with a largemouth, a catfish, a muskie, smallmouth, some of the big species, we as anglers know this is a big fish. You just know that. But like with the bluegill, with the pickerel, is that something that you just had to be conscious of and be like, I better check this fish to see if or did you memorize
for sure.
it?
Like I mean, at this point I have most of them like memorized, but like all that information is like on like the Game and Inlands like fishery like website as far as like like what the list is and things like that. So
What was the hardest one?
The hardest, well, like I said, like for some reason, like the crappie was like extremely hard to get for me, and now I've got like 4 or 5 or whatever. But like that was probably the one that I spent the most time and caught the most like fish. And then like getting the trout, like just as far as like the conditions and like I said, like how far you had to drive and things like that. So, but yeah, like it took me a really long time to get the crappie. So.
Now, is that the black crappie or white crappie? Maybe I've asked that already.
So that's one of the things. So when they changed the program in 2020, when they went from 25 to 30, they kind of split it. So before it used to just be a crappie, but now they actually have one for black and one for white, which interestingly enough, so I caught the white with Josh, who I know you're going to have on here in a little bit. Me and him caught that down at Bugs, which that was one of those things where it was just like the first time I went there like with him, I just happened to catch it. But it was pretty crazy that day. Was like the water was like 37 or 38 degrees. Like we had to like break ice and stuff like that. So that was a pretty cool story. So.
That's freaking awesome, dude.
Yeah, it was pretty nuts. So
is this just for freshwater species, correct, not saltwater?
So they do have a separate program like for the salt. Like I don't think it's run through the Game and Inlands Fishery, but they do have a saltwater citation like program. So, but I don't know much about it, and I know that it's a little bit different as far as I think like the documentation process and stuff is a little bit different. Like I think like the guides, where you have to take it to like a marina and things like that. Like you can't like submit them like yourself, as far as I know. So,
is that something you ever want to do?
So
once you conquer all the freshwater species,
maybe. So I have gotten into the saltwater fishing a little bit more over the last couple of years. Like we've taken a couple trips, but getting into that saltwater is like a whole nother world as far as like money and having the boat and the equipment and things like that. But we try to get out. We've done a cobia trip the last 2 years, and then last year we went to the Outer Banks, and we were supposed to go out for tuna, which is like a bucket list thing. We were going to go out to like the Gulf Stream, fish for tuna, but it was so windy that we had to stay inshore. But we ended up catching a bunch of king mackerel and some
so
triggerfish and stuff like that. So it was awesome.
That's freaking
and they're like
fun.
So good to eat too. So.
All right, we got some more comments right here. We got 4RHS. That's a great idea. Release a publication of Virginia fishing waters, but add the hot spots for season and any species and by most prevalent lures to use. That would be extremely helpful. Yeah, absolutely. And I like the idea of just like kind of like, there's an old show I used to watch called The Spanish Fly. I think his name was Jose Wajeve.
Yep. And
he had this cool saying, which is a bent pole is a happy pole. And as I've gotten older, there's so many species that I want to catch. It's not just about tournament bass fishing. You guys have known this. I want to catch a carp on a fly because I hear that like it's like a trash bonefish. It's a lot of fun. And there's so many little species like that I want to catch, and it sucks that I don't know if it's culture. Maybe we got to switch the messaging up, but we need to promote those different species that are they're fun as shit to catch. They really are.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I said, growing up fishing trout fishing, and then I kind of when I moved here, I did get into the bass thing. Started fishing tournaments, fishing the club, and I still do enjoy fishing the tournaments and things like that. But I kind of find it that it kind of takes away some of the joy of fishing, and I think people that are really into the tournament scene, that's what they're so focused on, and they're kind of to me, I just love fishing, and I love catching fish. So that's kind of what the citation thing did, is it just makes you a better angler, because you have to learn different things. You have to go to different waters, use different techniques and things like that. So I think it's made me a much more well-rounded angler, doing those things. And I still do enjoy the tournaments every once in a while. I like the competitive stuff, and but there's a lot more out there. So
yeah, and again, guys, I know the comment section is going to get, because that video that went viral yesterday about Randy Blockett and everything. I'm not knocking tournament fishing. I'm saying there's other things too. When I finally got in 2024, or 2023, my apologies, I got forward-facing sonar. I really got into crappie fishing and pan fishing again. It was just kind of fun to mess around with that. So it's just with tournament fishing, which I still enjoy. There's so many different things. And you mentioned trout fishing. How much trout fishing did you do before you moved to Virginia? Because Pennsylvania trout fishing.
That's pretty much all you do is trout fishing, especially because I grew up in the mountains. So there was
what part? Or generically speaking?
So I grew up in Cinemahoning, which is this really, really tiny town. Like I said, it's about an hour north of Penn State College.
Oh shit! Okay,
kind of close
I know
to the New York border and stuff like that. So it's mostly trout fishing. And then, like I said, my mom would take us in the summer. We'd go to some, some farm ponds, and there was this little state park, but it's mostly trout fishing. I never saw a bass boat growing up. A couple people might have had little John boats and things like that. So, which is kind of funny, because there we were about 2.5 hours to Lake Erie, which we've gone there 3 times in the last spring, and I'm I can't believe I grew up so close to Lake Erie and never fished there. After we've gone the last couple of years, I love Lake Erie, and this year we're gonna go to Cayuga in late May. So
that place is supposed to be really,
especially
really
after
great.
the Major League fishing was there last year, so we're gonna give that a try this spring. So but like you were saying, with the forward facing sonar, that I have it on my boat, and that's kind of I got into crappie fishing right before I had that, but now that you have the forward facing sonar, you said, it's just so much fun. You just go out, and it's just to me, it just makes it more enjoyable and stuff like that.
It does. It makes it so much more enjoyable to get out there and mess around, and you can fish. I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, but you can fish 12 months out of the year, more or less, with forward-facing sonar now. Where before you're we're done for the year. It's no, you can still pick them off now. Yeah,
and that's the thing, because even when I go out, it's pretty much always on, but I'm not always looking at it. I'm not always using it. If I am crappie fishing, I usually am, but it's it's fun to go out or bass fishing. It's maybe go out in the winter to kind of explore and kind of see what you can see and what you can catch. And to me, you said, it's just more enjoyable. You don't need it, but it's fun. So
it really is. Woods and water. You mentioned it at the beginning of the show. You're driving up 81 from Claytor Lake. You got involved with CC at Woods and Water, but then the relationship really grew from there.
Mm-hmm.
How'd that all go down?
So I love Chris. He's just such a nice guy and stuff like that. After I did that first article on the the Southwest trip, he just kept kind of encouraged me to keep writing. So that's what I've been doing. I think I've probably been doing articles for them for 6 years or something like that. And then so between chasing the citations and then doing things, it pushes me to get out, because lots of times if I want to do an article, I did a lot of writing about the citation program, and then lots of times I'll just do an article on a lake. Me and him will talk about something, or I'll pick a lake, and then I'll just go there and go fishing. So that's kind of pushed me also, is trying to do those articles and stuff like that. So but it's been really good. I love doing it and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm just a guy that likes to fish. So any kind of reason to get you out there and stuff like that. So just using that motivation and stuff like that.
So I got to finally talk to you in person at the Veterans Day tournament. Yeah, it's been a blur.
Yeah.
It was last November. What do you think about the big Swimbait culture now? It's really interesting how it's taken over.
It's definitely exploded. I know Mike Buca is here, and I know that you talked to him last year. I love Mike, super cool guy. I definitely, and then I'm on I don't know if on Facebook they have the Swimbait universe. It's got 30,000 people or something like that in it. But the Virginia has definitely been a boom for the big swim baits and stuff like that. Throwing the bull shads and those glide baits and stuff like that. It's just you know, it's another thing that's fun that gives you that opportunity like to catch those big fish. And I know like you fish with Matt like in that tournament, like that dude's like a wizard like with like the glide baits and stuff like that. So you know, like especially like people down here at the show. I mean, like my first bait that I got was a 6-inch bull shad. You know, and it's like $50, which is like kind of a lot of money, but like not like in the swim bait world and stuff like that. So like that's like what I started off on. And it's just, you know, this is another one of those things that's just like really fun. But you know, everybody should pick one up and give it a go. So
it's just fascinating to me because I never thought, stupidly, I thought that would not blow up as much as other baits because of the price tag. I thought if you're spending $200 to $300 for a custom-made bait, and because you can't mass manufacture them compared to like soft plastics, that would be a lot slower to become mainstream. But I was completely wrong with how, and maybe it's because I really think it's like, I think the point in time was when Milliken won on TV on the Bass Open. Yeah. I really feel like, in my mind, after that point is when you saw the sales just explode. I could be wrong, but it's insane.
Well, like you see like a lot of people coming out now with those like cheaper like swim baits and things like you know, in the swim bait world, like you see like a lot of things now getting like mass produced that are like $20, $30 and things like that. So I think people are getting into that. But yeah, like I mean, it's crazy that like you said, like in I don't know if my wife's watching or not, but like, dude, the amount of swim baits that I own now is like so stupid. Like, and I just have them like sitting in boxes. And I have way too much money invested in swim baits at this point. So, and then like once again, like most of my time, like these days, like I like to go crappie fishing. So I'm using like a 1/16 ounce jig that costs like 50 cents, and then I got like another rod with like a $200 like swim bait tied on. So it's kind of crazy.
Goodness. Oh, we got Jess. We got Jesse again. Aaron is a great dude. Good show. Jess, come on, ask some questions. Stop just complimenting him. It's getting a little weird. He's married. We got TDC Havoc. What time is the meet and greet today? On the road right now, heading to the show. Right now, I just pulled that up. Right now, my wife has scheduled me from noon to 3. Right now, noon to 3 is when the meet and greet is going to be. That way I'm available just to say hi to you guys. If that changes, please check Facebook, Instagram, and I'll post something on YouTube if that changes. But right now, it's between noon and 3 is the meet and greet. We talked about this before the show started, and I really want to hit this point home when it comes to different state records. In your opinion, should they put asterisks when you have a state record from, and I think this is like, and the reason I thought about this is from baseball, where you have Babe Ruth hit home runs and like, okay, he's the greatest ever, but it's like back then, it's like, yeah, if you drank 3 beers and you were a chain smoker, you were considered a top athlete.
Right.
If you have a largemouth state record that was from 1867 with no pictures or measurements, should we put an asterisk by that and look for a new one? Because it's just so weird. Like some of these records, like, oh, it'll never fall. It's like, but were they correct? Were they actually real at the time? I don't know.
Well, like that's the thing. Well, even like look at like the world record, like largemouth, you know, like and all like the stuff like that surrounds that. I mean, like it's so hard, right? Like you would think, especially like with the bass, like how high of a bar it is and how many people fish that, like there would be more like documentation about that. And I do agree, like you said, like something like the 1920s or the 1930s, like even like what kind of like scale was it being weighed on, or they don't have the pictures and things like that. So like I definitely probably maybe like have like an asterisk and things like that. And then like you think about too, like you said, like you have a fish in like the 1940s or 50s. It's just like it's crazy to think that like that was the biggest fish. Like, you know, it hasn't gotten any bigger, and with more technology that people have and like all that kind of stuff, like how is that possible that, you know, somebody hasn't caught a fish in the last like 50 or 60 years that's bigger than that? It's kind of like wild. So
do you think the largemouth record will be broken in our lifetime for Virginia?
Oh man, like you want to say like yes, because, you know, going back to like that technology and like the forward-facing sonar and things like that. But then, I mean, whenever it was, I mean, what is it, like the 1920s or 30s or something like that? So you're looking at 100 years, but I would say yes. We'll
now,
yes.
Now I don't say lake-wise, but like region-wise.
I mean, like you have to assume it's probably gonna be like Texas or Florida or California. I mean, like, you know, like you look at what's going on in like at OH Ivy, like the last couple of years and things like that, like where those dudes are catching those 15 to 16 pounders. You would just think that maybe like one of them gets the 20. You know, obviously, like, I think the state record in Virginia is like 16, which that's like a pretty high bar. I mean,
so
like,
do you think the Virginia record will fall in our lifetime?
No. Because,
really?
I mean, because I don't think, like, I know there's a couple guys like John Huckstep, like, and Ronnie Stubbs, who are like these, like, they've each caught like 13 pounders like in the last like couple years. So, but I mean, but they get from 13 to 16, like that's like a huge bar. And those are the biggest fish that I know of. Like, I mean, obviously, like, people are probably out fishing that aren't posting to social media, like, and things like that. But like, to my knowledge, like they've each caught a 13 pounder in the last couple years. And I mean, and those are the biggest fish like that I know of that have been caught in Virginia.
Do you think
So,
there should be like a modern state record then? That's the thing I think that there should be is like the asterisks and things. Like there should be a modern record, and then you can have like the at record, the OG.
Yeah.
Because like when you say 16 pounds, and I don't think when you look at the photo and the scales and stuff, it's like, is really?
Right.
Like, it's weird that we don't have another fish that's like that swimming around.
When it's like funny too, because I'm pretty sure like the Virginia state record, like it came from, I don't know if it's like it's like a really small lake that's like down like close to the North Carolina border, and it was only like, I think if I'm correct, like it was like an 80-acre lake or something like
small,
that. So you
yeah.
think about like that, and then I mean, but there are some lakes. I mean, like we have one like it's close to Charlottesville. Like you have some of those mountain lakes where they are stocking trout and stuff like that.
That's where I think.
I mean,
it's,
like,
yeah.
and I caught. That's where the biggest bass I've ever caught. Like I didn't have a scale. Like I think it was a 10-pounder. Like when you see the pictures, it was stupid big. But I mean, yeah, like you have like those little lakes. They don't get a lot of pressure and they get stocked with trout. So like if something was going to come out of there, I think it would come out like one of those lakes. Because you look at like places like Lake Anna or like Smith Mountain Lake's like obviously been on the rise the last couple of years. But like even at Lake Anna, like you never catch it. Like nobody catches a 10-pounder. Which that part it'd be interesting like to hear from like Alex or somebody else with like Game and Inland Fisheries like about why that is. Because Lake Anna has so much like forage and bait, and like it seems like it would be better. But
Odenkirk has talked about that since that's kind of he
yeah.
runs Odenkirk runs that region
Yeah.
up to Occoquan Reservoir, and he thinks it's on the uptick now, especially now that there's SAV in there. There's a healthy population of that getting established. The
and they
bait's
stock
there.
F1s too.
F1s are now there, and based on what he said, like we won't see the F1s hit that 5 and 6 pound thing for 2 or 3 more years.
Really?
Which is insane, because if that is true, the 30-pound bag that was knocked was all northern strain.
Yeah.
Which is freaking awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there definitely is like, like Anna, like there is that good population of 5, 6, 7 pounders, but
Yeah.
it's just like, why do they not get bigger than like 9 or 10? Like even like a 9-pounder is like super rare over there, and like a 10-pounder is like unheard of. So
I wonder if it's Jane's too. I really, because if you look at like Occoquan Reservoir, where you need a 5-pound average of 6,
Right.
and I had Shane on this show, and it's like, yeah, that's a 6-pound limit, but the idea that you have to catch 5 6s and everyone in the top 5 have all
Yeah.
5s that are it's a shit ton of
Yeah.
5-pounders.
Well, and that's kind of like going back, when we were talking about like Broward. I mean, that's how it is there too. But they don't have tournaments there because they're not allowed. And then they also do have like a wild slot limit. I think it's like 14 to 24 inches. Like you can't keep a fish. So I mean, but it's just another one of those places, right, where it's like if you want to catch like 4, I mean, you can go there and catch a 20-pound bag. Like it's one of those places. Like if you don't have 20, like if you didn't have 20 pounds, like it wouldn't even be anything because it's just like not that hard to do.
Oh, that's freaking awesome. All right, we got some questions here coming in. Let's see. Here we go. I think we got your wife here. We got. He's not lying. His stuff is all over the house.
I hope it's her after you said that.
We got a couple more people. Yeah, if you don't know him, he's the man, the myth, the legend. He's Aaron Bell. He Woods and Water citation phenom. We got Jess Kerr. Oh, he's finally asking a question and not just trying to propose to you here, Jess. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hot side of Lake Anna, what species have you caught hot versus cold? Can you break it down? That's a good question.
So what species on the hot side?
Yeah, so let's see. Hot side of Lake Anna, what species have you caught? Hot versus cold, can you break it down?
So luckily I do have a buddy that has a place on the hot side, so he lets me fish. Like the bass fishing is really good as far as if you want to go catch like numbers and things like that. Like, and there are, I've caught a few like 4 or 5 pounders over there, but if you want to go to, like, it's one of those places where you can catch like 50, 75 fish a day. And then like obviously like this time of year you can go throw top water, so that's kind of cool.
That is pretty awesome.
There's a lot of white perch, like the white perch on the hot side are a lot bigger too than the cold side, which I don't know why. I actually did catch a citation crappie on the hot side, but there's like the crappie fishing is nowhere near as good on the hot side as it is the cold side.
That's interesting.
And I have caught stripers on the hot side, but it's, once again, like the cold side's way better. And if you want to catch channel catfish, the hot side's the place to go. But they're also like 12 inches. But like there's like an infestation of channel catfish there. I don't know why.
With the housing prices, when I was a kid, the housing prices were really different between the hot side or let's just call it the public side and the private side of the lake. Now, with everything that's going on in the world, the prices are dead even. Will they ever try to open up the hot side a little bit more, even if it's just like a pay-to-play boat ramps for people?
So, it seems unlikely because my understanding, because the hot side, I guess, is basically run by like the
HOA.
Well, no, like by the like the power plant, like Dominion or whatever. So they kind of like really have a tight rein like on that, and like to the point where like I know that you're not supposed to have tournaments over there. and I know that people do like a lot every once in a while. And then I think they have some weird restrictions on like maybe like the docks and things like that. So like I don't foresee that, because what would be smart is like somebody that owned a house over there or one of those community things like to like pay, be like, hey, like a lot of other places where you pay like $10, but I don't think legally anybody's allowed to do that. So I don't see it being open. I mean, could be wrong, but like it just seems like the way that it's run, probably
That's
not.
a real shame. It really is. I mean, that was always been my hope that, somehow if the dike ever got removed, you could have a lake there that could actually hold a BFL. But it was funny because like people always, when I said that in the comment section, people were like, well, the lake's not big enough. It can't do a 140 boat tournament. It's
Definitely.
like, well,
It's wild.
but it's like,
Because
we
when
just
fished
had
it-
a 140 boat tournament
like,
in November.
Exactly. That's something I've never understood, right, is why don't they have a BFL there? Because like you said, it's certainly big enough. Like you said, like we just fished a 110 or 20 boat tournament or whatever. And like, even that day, like it wasn't that bad. Like as far as like, I mean, like Lake Anna's always like wild as far as like the pressure in the tournaments, but like even with that 100 boat tournament, like I never felt it was like too much or anything like that. So there's plenty of room. So.
No, and to me, like the biggest thing with that is I feel like you need to at least, even if you don't have a tournament at Lake Anna, the announcement needs to be made that like we tried to have one there, because if a fishery is fishing good, it's to highlight it, because you're trying to praise the department for doing the work.
Right.
Versus going to a lake, like the classic example is when FLW would always go to Beaver. Every year it was shit, or the Sabine for bass, and it's because they're getting paid. I get that to an extent, but if somebody puts a lot of work in to like make the lake good, you got to highlight it somehow to promote it. I don't know.
It's kind of like interesting, like as far as like you said, like with that, as far as like there's like a double-edged sword with the promotion, because like because then the places get exposed, which is good. I mean, like you said, like everybody wants to like to make the money and things like that, but then you look at like where some of these like tournaments go, like this year, like with the Major League Bass like, going to the Chowan River, like in North Carolina, like I think that's really going to put that place on the map, and you're going to see that place explode. Like I think that's going to be like a really good tournament like this spring.
It's a fun dynamic, because you have the departments, you have the state departments where they try to put money into a fishery to make it better, but then you have the anglers that are like, we want you to come in and fix our fisheries, but then we don't want to tell people about it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where I think there's this disconnect there. It's like, if you want people to improve the fisheries, the double-edged sword of that, they'll improve it, but then they have to promote it or they won't do it anymore.
Right. Well, and then you look at places like Gunnersville or like Chickamauga, like those places, like the insane pressure that those places get, and then still pump the fish out and stuff like that. So I mean, like,
and they husband it really well. And then you look when those private people came in. That's one episode I really need to get at some point, where you had private stocking of the James, and all of a sudden it went from dinks to like it became a stud, and then they started to do that to Smith and other places. It put them on the map, but now they keep pumping them out. They're a fish factory.
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, like Smith Mountain Lake was like really exploded with those stockings of the F1s. Like, it's really interesting, which it's kind of crazy that a big tournament hasn't come back there like in so long. Like like the Bass Masters or Major League Fishing, like there, or Bugs or whatever. So
yeah, I'd love to see one. And I'm not saying, guys, you put the BFL there every single year. It would just be nice to every now and then to see a big tournament come out of there, to show it some respect and to see what kind of weights those guys can catch. Because I would rather go to Lake Anna. If you were in the Shenandoah division, for example, I would rather go to Lake Anna than all the way down to Kerr. That's the Shenandoah division. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So we're going to go down. We got so many questions. Let's get back to the top here. We're going to get some more questions, guys, before we take a quick pause so I can gear up for our next interview, because I know we got a ton of stuff to do today. Got people telling me, we got that one done. We got Beaver Hall. Hard to get estate records these days with that kind of weight for many reasons, mainly pressure, pollution, food availability days. Okay, so, oh God, I don't want to go on a tangent. I don't think 100% of that is factually accurate. I think I had Joe Love on the show. I've had so many biologists on the show, and there was a time when the Potomac River and the Delaware River were on fire because of all the pollution. The goddamn river was on fire. I have crossed DC in different places. The river's not on fire anymore. So if you take it from a big perspective from the 50s till now, the water quality is 1,000 times better. It's gotten better. So I don't think it's necessarily a pollution issue. Pressure, I think that's something that we could talk about, that there's a pressure issue there. However, I think we're trying to husband the resource a lot better because you're having stocking programs. I think the food availability, I think it's there because we're trying to husband this. So out of the three, I will grant you, I think the pressure's a lot harder. But when these records were caught in the 70s, people were killing.
Yeah,
they were like it wasn't catch and release. That's what's weird. It's like, how is it in the 70s? I think that was my chat. Anyone can help me out. I think that's before they did catch, weigh, release with Ray Scott. So that means you're taking these big ass stringers of fish, they're cranking out 10-pounders. Now we're putting the damn things back.
Well, and I think that's part of the problem too, though, is now people don't keep the fish. So like a lot of these places have like so many fish. I mean, like I do think, especially with the bass thing, like I do think that's part of it is like because all these fish are being put back, and then it's kind of like an overpopulation.
Yeah.
Like a lot of lakes, especially these smaller ones, would benefit from having some fish like taken out of them, in my opinion, and from some of the stuff that I've read and things like that. Like I think some bass should be harvested, and I know that's like crazy to say, and like people like lose their mind and stuff like that. But like those like 1 to 2 pound fish, like I mean, I don't know. I
agree with that. You know, and that's just a culture thing. It took so long to change the culture there. I mean, people are talking about the catch, weigh, release versus weigh in. I mean, that's no different. Like when they made the announcement about the call tag switch, and people lost their mind. Like changing culture like that, it's hard, and it's not something you do overnight. It's gradual if that's something that's supposed to be done. But I agree with that. Let's see. Wasn't the MLF at the James a year ago or so? Yes, they were. I mean, there was a year, like, it was like the Bass Open,
yeah, like,
MLF. It was like,
yeah, they were getting pounded.
yeah, and again, I'm not saying like you have back-to-back tournaments like that, but the more waters you can have big tournaments on, you can diversify it, so hopefully you don't have to pound just the James River 7 times. Let's see, where am I at? Dude, like, so I'm at the Richmond Expo. You can read all the social media posts. Hopefully you can see one of those, but I'm at the Richmond Expo all day. Domain owns, here we go. Here's a good one. Green David 41, agreed, not sure how it translates to larger bodies of water, but for a long, it's 30 pounds per acre per year that needs to be harvested. Yeah, I mean, it's such a fine line. We went from you keep everything to now you release everything, and we're trying to find that balanced ground there. Aaron, I did want to make sure that we highlight the magazines and the medals here too.
Sure.
So start wherever you like to start.
So I mean, yeah. So like talking like with like the citation program, like one of the nice things that they do, even though it is kind of hard to get, is they do send you these pins. You know, so like if you get an angler of the month, like they'll send you a pin, and then so every month, and it's another one of those things where you can go online and they'll have it listed like on the website. So if you get the biggest fish of the month, like they'll send you the thing, and then like at the end of the year, if you catch like the biggest fish of the year, they'll send you one too, which I think this one is one of the Angler of the Year ones. So
start up to the fancy cam. That's pretty cool.
So those are pretty cool. I mean, like they're obviously like kind of hard to get, so I feel like pretty cool about like getting those.
They were
and stuff
bigger
like
though.
that. Yeah.
I don't know, but that's pretty cool.
The other thing that they also will send you a like when we were talking about the or the levels, they'll send you a patch too. So
that's awesome.
So that's pretty cool. So like I have a lot of that stuff like in my office at work and things like that. And then obviously like I just brought a couple of the magazines where I've been lucky enough to be on the cover. Like we got like that with the catfish.
Woods and Water, everyone go check it out. I think their booth, I should have this memorized.
They're right near the front, I know that. So
I think they're booth 11 or 12. They're right there, right in the front, 11 or 12, I think is where they're at, guys. So come on down and see them.
Yeah. That one is, my wife is probably not happy. So that one's currently on my wall. You know,
that's so
I got
cool.
like a replica done of that one. So,
dude, I would love to catch a big crappie like that.
Like the crazy thing about like the crappie too is when you get those really big ones, like they're like a different fish. Like you get like that 15, 16 inch crappie is just like not even like normal.
They fight like a bass almost.
Oh yeah, like I mean,
like
yeah, like you get those nice crappie and stuff like that. I mean, like, they put up a good fight. So, yeah.
Aaron, if people want to follow all your exploits, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Facebook, and I've been trying to post more of my stuff on Instagram and stuff like that. So it's PSU Aaron. So you know, happy to follow along. And like I said, I just like to fish, and everybody likes to fish. You're a friend of mine, so.
Dude, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show, guys. This is our game plan right now. What we're gonna do, I'm gonna keep this stream open and running. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to put on a little commercial. We're gonna be starting here at about 9:15ish. Honestly, when my next guest shows up, but we do have another guest here. We're gonna be talking crappie fishing here before we go start hitting booth to booth as well. So please hang tight. 15-minute breakish, and then we're gonna be right back at it. Thank you so much.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
did you launch him 80
You
feet in
told
the
me
air?
to boat flip him!
I didn't tell you to launch him 78
I
feet in
flipped
the
him
air.
in the boat, didn't I?
Send it to the moon.
I sent it! You said boat flip him!
Oh, yeah.
Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never, disappointed out here because I don't expect anything, because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
On my property, you didn't win in my yard.
Wait.
All of you.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Hello, guys. Welcome back to Richmond Expo Day 2 Electric Boogaloo. This is our second in-booth conversation of the day. We are also going to be going to booth to booth to hit whatever we have actually left off. If there's someone that you really want to see, please let me know in the episode description, Instagram, Facebook, email, text, smoke signals, I don't care. As you guys know, with Fishing the DMV, it's not just about the bass fishing. That's the niche that I know and I have friends in, so it's very easy for me to actually start there and branch out. And every year I try to add more to it. Last year it was really adding to all the rivers and lakes that are in the systems, but I want to branch out and do more cat fishing, striper fishing. I had Will Nash on talking about striper fishing at Kerr, which I think is really freaking cool. And I wanted to get crappie on, but I didn't know where to start. And then as you know, way leads on to way, Aaron, who we just had on, really got me in contact with these two beautiful people here. Josh and Jeff, thank you guys so much for coming on. I mean, just tell the crowd like what you guys do and just how this all got started for you.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Josh Morris. I run the Richmond Crappie Club. I started it back in 2020. I grew up with a third of an acre pond in the backyard, and so I'd fish there all the time. Then we'd float down the James River in a canoe. We used to do that once or twice a summer, and started doing that. Then I went off to college and kind of got away from fishing a little bit. And when I got back, finished college, started work, a buddy and I would fish after work. And then from there, we started seeing these pictures on Facebook of people catching, a cooler full of 1 pound crappie, and I grew up catching half a pound crappie.
Dang.
So I'm thinking, okay, I need to start learning how to fish these public waters. And my thought was, if I go to tournaments, if I find a tournament, I can learn a lot. And my $40 donation or whatever it may be, that's well worth the investment on figuring out, okay, where to fish, how to fish, what to do, and to meet people, network and learn the techniques. So I started doing that. Then I just got hooked. And then I fished for a couple of years. Live Scope came out, and that changed the game. Got Live Scope, and I've had that for now, about 5 years. And so just branched off from there, started the Richmond Crappie Club, went down to Bugs Island, started fishing the Bobcats Crappie Series, and then I got Jeff over here. I think I converted him from bass fisherman over to the crappie side.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, came up same just like Josh, fishing country pond, in the country, and went into smallmouth fishing when I was younger, 18, 19 years old. Did that for 25 or so years. Ended up trying some largemouth fishing out. Went to Chesdon and fished there some. And my son saw that Richmond Crappie Club was coming to have a tournament there. So I said, let's try it. So we tried it and pretty much started fishing them. The next year we did the whole season with them. Got to be better friends with Josh. And then one December morning, he decided to take me out and show me the Live Scope, and it's been nothing but crappie fishing since then. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm now fishing and with the Bobcats. We've done, the Southeast Crappie Alliance trail last year and did fairly well with that. And had a lot of fun and just really enjoy using the forward-facing sonar to catch crappie. So,
Josh, when did you decide I wanted to be a masochist and actually run a tournament organization? Because that is stressful as hell. Like, how did that?
It is. I'll tell you, it's a lot less work to just show up at somebody else's tournament. Fished a tournament last weekend and showing up there, especially going down to Bobcats, just being a participant.
You can enjoy it and relax.
Yeah, this is relaxing. Don't have to worry about everything else. Well, I knew I wanted to get better at crappie fishing, and so I knew I wanted to fish more bodies of water. And when you're in a tournament setting, you fish different than if you're just out fun fishing. When you're fun fishing, it's if I don't catch them, I don't care. In a tournament, you're pushing 100% the whole time if you want to be competitive. So I fished my buddy Ryan Smith. He has a crappie trail called the Peanut City Crappie Trail down in Suffolk. There are a bunch of small lakes, 9.9 horsepower lakes. Fished those, and I said, the Richmond area could really benefit from having a crappie series. Going as far north as Lake Anna and as far south as we've had our classic on Bugs Island one year and down on Lake Gaston one year. So we just fished 5 tournaments, 5 bodies of water, and it's been a lot of fun. And each year it's grown. The first year I just had a bunch of tournaments. So let's see who's interested and where this goes. And we averaged 4.5 boats per tournament. It was either 4 or 5 boats every tournament. And then last year we averaged 14.
Wow.
So it's growing. I think this year there's a chance we may average over 20 boats per tournament. And the people that get into it, it's awesome just to see the transformation they have from. We really advertise to folks that have never crappie fished before, want to get into it, don't know where to start, don't know what to do. And we share tips and tricks at every weigh-in. The top 3 I ask them, you don't have to give away your locations and burn your spot, but what did you do? Did you use a slip bobber? Were you spider rigging? Were you fishing docks? Were you fishing brush piles? What were you doing? And we want everybody to catch fish. In most tournaments, everybody's catching fish. So,
cultural-wise, as a novice in the crappie world and everything that's going on in it, it always came across to me as a Midwest thing. Has there always been a strong crappie scene in Virginia in this area, or is it something that's just starting to grow out more?
I think it's definitely starting to grow. I think it's been pretty small. I mean, you look like Mississippi is the hub for crappie fishing.
Okay.
Yeah, and a year and a half ago went down to the Crappie Masters National Championship, and that I think it was 180 boats in a tournament. I mean, that down there it's huge. It's some of those lakes down there, the crappie fishing's bigger than the bass fishing. And it's into September when the crappie are usually a lot smaller. It averaged, I think it was 18 pounds on 7 crappie. So over 2.5 pounds a piece.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Massive crappie down there. And I think it's slowly starting to work its way north. A couple of the lakes like Bugs Island have always been really well known for crappie. And Bobcats has been having that trail for a long time. But I think historically it's been a little bit intimidating when you see these folks that are long lining, trolling 8 rods behind the boat, or spider rigging, having 8 rods in front of the boat. Until now with live scope, you just need 1 rod. You just need live scope, trolling motor, and that's pretty much it. 1 rod, you can get it done.
And for guys in the comment section down below, best question wins a gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle. So start answering some questions here. This is really cool that we can actually start talking about crappie as well. For people that don't know, how do crappie tournaments work? Maybe there are guys that just bass fish, they've never done a crappie tournament before. 5 fish limit, 6 fish limit. What's the standard? Is it catch and take home? Is it how does all that work?
It varies a lot from tournament to tournament. I'd say Bobcats has pretty much adopted the standard, the historical standard, which is 7 crappie, and they must be alive. If your fish dies, it doesn't count.
Oh.
And then on your boat, you can keep more than 7 fish. All right, so most of the time when we're in a tournament together, we'll try to keep 8 fish alive, just in case one dies, then we have an extra fish.
Okay.
All right, so that's the way we work. And like Bobcats, you meet at the bait and tackle store in the morning, and then from there they draw numbers on when you can leave the parking lot. You start fishing when you get to your spot, and then you fish until 3 o'clock. You stop fishing at 3, and then you have to be back in the weigh-in line by 4 o'clock back at the store. And then you weigh in your 7 heaviest fish.
Jeff, I'm sorry. Is live bait something that's standard in these tournaments, or is it just all artificial?
Most of the time, unless it's specifically stated that it's artificial bait only, most of your crappie tournaments allow live bait. So you can use minnows or whatever you might have you to use. It's no problem. We have, in the Richmond Crappie Club, we've had a tournament or 2 a year, where it's artificial bait only, 1 rod, you could only fish with 1 rod at a time. And just, just to make it interesting and mix things up a little bit. But on the whole, most of your crappie tournaments is live bait. You can use the minnows. And we tip a lot of our jigs with minnows, especially in the colder weather this time of year, especially on tournament day, just for that added insurance to catch the fish, Give them something to taste, give them something to smell. And
how much does a difference that make now with all the technology you have and everything you can buy, gulp, sense, and crab? Is still a chunk of dead fish or live minnow? Is it that much of a difference maker sometimes?
I feel like it is, but it might just be what I'm confident
it's in your head type thing? Yeah.
What I'm confident with, like having a bait that you're more confident with, or a color, because I'm more of a natural color type crappie fisherman. I typically going to use some white, shad colored, something like that. I kind of stay away from the brighter color. It's just my preference.
Yeah. With that being said, I'll say for tournament fishing for me, I started off crappie fishing just spider rigging before live scope, so always used a minnow. So then when live scope came out, I kept using a minnow, and then I noticed some tournaments you'd have those fish that was short strike, and now when you've got a jig tipped with a minnow and they're short striking, they're just getting the tail of the minnow, and you're really not hooking them at all. So I've started now a lot of tournaments. I'll use just a hair jig first and see how they respond to that. And if they commit to it, that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to waste time digging in the minnow bucket, putting the minnow on, making sure that the minnow stays alive. I'm not going to worry about all that. But if they're not committing to it and you need to dead stick it, then we'll put a minnow on. So
how do you practice for a tournament when you're talking for crappie? Is it how many spots do you want? How many schools do you want? Are you, and I've seen this, I think Matt Panrack of BTL talks about just hunting one fish. What are some of the strategies, basic strategies that you guys use?
Yes, I'll say it was kind of interesting. I started fishing more with different people, and I was fishing with one of Aaron Ball's buddies, Brian Green, and he was surprised when I told him that I'm not just trying to catch a limit. You know, it's not uncommon to go out and be able to catch 50 crappie or 100 crappie, but if you're weighing in 7, you want 7.
Yeah.
Maybe your goal that day is to catch a dozen or 15. So it depends on your goal, but if it's specifically a tournament, my goal is always to look at the weights of previous years and say, okay, if there's 25 boats and they're paying the top 5, what does 5th place have? All right? Or do they need a pound and a half average, a pound and a quarter, a 1 pound? And it really varies on the time of the year and the body of water that you're on. And then from there, you know, if it's going to take a pound and a half fish, I don't want to catch a fish less than a pound and a quarter unless it gets to that 12 o'clock mark and you're really struggling and maybe we need to drop back and punt.
Find the insurance, yeah. So you'll go into the tournament knowing I've got this quality fish here, this quality fish here. And it really depends on the time of year, because when we get into this time of the year, we're looking for more of a single fish here and there versus like when we get into it in October and stuff like that. I might have 5 to 10 quality fish on a piece of structure. Well, now I'm looking for this time of year, most of the time I'm looking for them in open water. They're not on structure. They're not structure related, so they're just kind of around the bait. And
for bass snobs, how lockjaw can a crappie get compared to a bass? Can they be just as a pain of an ass when they're off?
I'd say so.
Yes, most definitely.
I mean, I would say 90 to 95% of the fish we're catching at a crappie tournament, we're seeing them on live scope. Yeah. We see the crappie. We know exactly what we want to do. We know how to present the bait, and depending on the temperature of the water, how aggressive that fish is going to be, how you want to put that bait in front of them. And it can get very frustrating when, you know, you go to a weigh-in and it's like, I saw a dozen fish, and if I had caught one of those 12 fish, that would have put us in the money. But we just couldn't get them to bite.
Couldn't get them to bite.
Jeez.
And you know, it's like we know that those are the crappie that we need. I just caught one that's a pound and a half, and this one's bigger and it won't bite.
How long do you give them? Do you have it in your head like a clock of like how long you're going to give the school if it's not cooperating? I feel like, depending on the conditions, when you first approach that fish and have the first drop on it, your best chances of catching that fish are right then. And if they don't commit to it on the first drop, I think your chances just cut in half.
Yeah.
Maybe worse.
Maybe worse.
I mean, it's a lot of times we give them 3 chances maybe?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. And then, you know, it's a certain amount of time too. If that fish, you know, if you're fishing for your suspended fish and he sees your bait and then he locks on it and he's looking at it and he's looking at it and he's looking at it, at a certain point, you know, we'll try to ease it away from it to entice him to bite it. But at that point, you know, he'll follow and then he's gonna pull off. He's not gonna commit. Yeah, your chances of catching that fish just drop dramatically. At that point, sometimes what we'll do is switch up baits on him, and I'll be sitting, you know, behind. So, okay, let's try this bait on, hand him the rod, and put that bait in front of the fish, trying to change that bait. And sometimes that'll work to entice that fish to bite, you know, after you've already kind of messed him up a little bit per se. So,
go for it.
I'll say another thing that plays into it too is how many tournament fish are you seeing in a day? And we have some tournaments there, it's like every 15 minutes we see a tournament fish. All right, so you got to think, I'm big about efficiency. Bass fishing is the same way. You want to put your bait in front of as many tournament fish as possible in that day. You know, so if you find a tournament fish and it's not cooperating, but you think you can find another tournament fish in 15 minutes, well, don't waste 15 minutes on that fish that would bite. You know, but if it's taking you an hour and a half, sometimes we only see 5 tournament fish in a day. If you see one, you may want to give it a little bit more time.
yeah.
How much is live scope affect? Now we can talk about the positives too, which it's opened up crappie fishing, bass fishing in general. I've seen with me when I'm bass fishing, bass are starting to shine away. When you hit them with a cancer ray, depending on how close they are, they will shy away. Are crappie that susceptible to it as well?
I don't think it's been that way yet. Now it's interesting when we're going out, like if I go out to like Lake Anna and I'm looking for open water fish, I don't know for sure, but as far as people that are specifically targeting crappie on Lake Anna for open water, I don't think there's that many. Right. I don't think there's many at all.
Wow.
Now, you go down to Bugs Island and it's becoming a lot more prevalent.
Why? Why do you think that is?
I think Bugs Island's just known as a place. I mean, you can catch a 3-pound crappie at Bugs Island, and it's not that uncommon. There's several 3-pound crappie every year. Lake Anna, you don't hear about that very often.
But they're not open water at Lake Anna compared
no,
to
you will.
Kerr?
So
Okay.
it depends. It really depends on the time of the year. I've always thought that the warmer the water, the more likely that fish is to be structure-oriented or cover-oriented. And then the same thing with the clarity of the water. I think the clearer the water, the more often they stay to that cover or that structure. You go to like Smith Mountain Lake, you'll find them on a brush pile in February. You go down to Bugs Island, it's tough to find a tournament fish on a brush pile in February because they're all in open water.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, it's very tournament fishing at Bugs Island is very frustrating and very rewarding. It's very pattern specific. So you need to know that time of the year, what should the fish be doing? What depth are they going to be? What part of the lake are they going to be? And there's so many different patterns that you can find at any given time too. So,
God, that's freaking interesting. Because, yeah, I mean, I thought it was just bass that gave people headaches on Kerr. I didn't think about, like, crappie and other kind of game fish like that. Is it because of all the blueback, the pelagic nature of that lake where fish want to chase versus set up on structure? Is that kind of why they're different there, you think?
I wonder if it has more to do with the predator fish.
Yeah, I would think
I wonder
so.
if when the stripers, stripers and the big bass, it seems like when the water's a little bit warmer, they're more active. And then I think those crappie are on the brush pile to get away from them. Now, it's interesting, too, because it seems like the bigger the crappie, the less skittish they are as far as being
They feel
in
a
the
little
cover.
safer, yeah.
Those 2+ pound crappie aren't scared as nearly as much as a half-pound crappie.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And we got one question. Or we got. I'm sorry about that, guys. We got swirl. Let me pull it up there. We got swirl. Oh my God, I love some of your usernames, guys. We got swirl like. Swirl like. You just want a gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle. Message me on Facebook, Instagram. You can do fishingthedmv@gmail.com. Looking for a starter crappie rod. You got any suggestions? Thoughts on a starter crappie rod?
I've come to really like the ACC crappie sticks, and that they have a pretty good variety of whether you want to shoot docks, whether you want a jig and pole, whether you want a long pole. The crossover rods, I use that a lot when I'm single poling or pitching. They have a 12 and a 13 foot. I've got mine. They have them here at the show. Dance's booth has them here today. They have plenty of them to choose from. Some really, really nice rods. I think he actually has a dock shooter going down to 5.5 foot, I believe. But I've been using those ACC sticks, and I've tried 4 or 5 of the other vendors for crappie rods, and that's just the one that I'm really, really comfortable with. I think I'm up to about 5 or 6 of them now that I own. So, yeah.
Generically, line-wise, I mean, I'm assuming you're not using. Are you using like 30-pound braid to a 20-pound leader? Like, what is a good starter setup when it comes to your spinning reel and your line?
I like pretty light line, and it's interesting too because you can dive into it if you're just starting out. Like same thing with bass fishing. You're just starting out. You may want to get a rod and reel and line that works for a variety of
jack
techniques.
of all trades kind of thing.
Yeah. And the same thing with bass fishing. You know, you start off bass fish, you might want to dial a combo that's $80 or $100. And if you get into it, you're throwing a jerk bait or a crank bait or, flipping a jig or something, you want something completely specific. And that's kind of how we've gotten to the point. We've got this rod for this technique and this rod for this technique. And it's all very specific. Now, starting out, I think most people like crappie fishing, they like to cast a jig, a hair jig or a plastic, reel it back in, reel it over a brush pile or shoot a dock. And that's probably the funnest way to catch
Right.
it.
That would be a jigging rod. I would go with a jigging rod with that,
Yeah.
8, 9 foot, 7 foot, something like that.
Yep. Even a dock shooter, 5.5.
Yeah.
I mean, shooting docks is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, and then as far as your question about line, I really like the slime line, and it goes back to the technique that you're doing. If you're shooting docks, I like a high vis, and usually like 4-pound test. Usually something really light, maybe 6 pound. The thing is, the lighter the line, the easier it is to shoot the jig, and you can shoot it significantly further with the light line. Now, I've got a love-hate relationship with 4-pound test because that's the touchy mark between being able to shoot that jig way to the back where that big crappie's probably going to be hiding and that crappie running around one of those dock pilings and breaking you off. Now, when we start using our long rods, we start using like a 13-foot ACC crossover.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Where the hell do you fit that in the boat? My God.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that my first boat that I was crappie fishing out was a 16-foot boat, and I had a 16-foot rod. And so where they started, they hung out the back. So you see going down the road, and the rod tips are bouncing.
Oh, God, man. All the money you put in that, too.
But with those, a lot of times we'll be using 10-pound line, and if we're targeting an individual fish, I don't care if it's high vis. I like that super stretch pretty good because when you're horsing on that rod and that fish with a 13-foot rod, you think about a 5.5-foot rod, the distance that you travel setting the hook versus that 13 from here to vertical. There's a lot more stress on that fish.
What are the perks of that? And that's something we can really get into the. And then, guys, keep the questions going. I'll make sure we'll get them answered by our crew here. Best question wins a gift card. With that longer rod, is it basically your Damiki rigging, so to speak, where you're keeping that thing hovered out in front of them? Is that the purpose of having that 13, 14-foot rod?
It depends on what you're doing. I mean, like if I'm pulling up on a structure, say the warm water fish are structure oriented, and I want to pitch over that structure, so I'm actually only using enough line to the same length of the rod. So it's giving me like 23 foot of a pitch to come over top of a structure in front of my boat. And so it's no really, once I hook the fish, I'm pretty much just bringing them around and bringing them into the boat. I'm not reeling them in. I'm not fighting it like that. And that's the idea. So I can do multiple pitches with the same movement and then pitch again and just keep, and I like to keep the bait hovered over top of their heads and see how they react to the bait.
Okay,
so,
that makes a lot of sense.
There's a lot of different techniques. With crappie fishing, it's interesting. I'd say we're pretty much always fishing within 25 feet from the trolling motor to the fish. And a lot of times it's 15 to 20. Now, when you start getting in clear water, the game changes. But a lot of the waters that we fish are stained or muddy. And so, just like Jeff said, you'll pitch that bait out. And then with a long rod, you can control the speed that bait comes past that fish because you can lift your rod tip and you can bring it back to you. All right.
That makes sense.
Now, with that being said, too, if you're spider rigging, which is how a lot of us started out before live scope, we would have 2 rod racks. Each rod rack could hold 4 rods, and you'd have 16-foot rods. The longer the rod, the further you get the bait from the boat, and you'd vary your depths. You say, okay, inside I want it to be 16 feet deep, and I might go 14, 12,
How
10.
do you feel them on a flagpole? I'm thinking it's pretty thick, or is it pretty thin?
Well, it depends on the rod, too. The rods from now to 7 years ago when I started crappie fishing, have gotten a lot better. Okay. They're a lot lighter and they're a lot more sensitive.
A whole lot better. Yeah.
So that makes a big difference. It's interesting, too, just the types of rods that you use, the pros and cons to each rod, right? So when you're spider rigging, a lot of times you'll see the tip will be very sensitive. The backbone's very strong, but the tip is sensitive. So you're just watching the tip of the rod. And if you're truly spider rigging without live scope, you want a high vis line where you can see that line move or twitch just to the side. Right. Now, with these rods now, I mean, you can feel, I can tell if I have a minnow on a hair jig, I can feel when that minnow's gone because they're so sensitive.
That's insane.
Believe it or not. Now, with that being said, the more pieces you add onto a rod, you lose sensitivity. Most of these long rods are 2 pieces that we like to use.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Once you add that 3rd piece, I think you lose a lot of sensitivity.
How prevalent is spider rigging now that live scope is such a basis in tournaments?
For tournament fishing, there's not many people doing it.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Now, for fun fishing, I'm getting ready to set up some T-bars on my boat just to go out like the James River Christmas Eve a couple years ago. My dad and I were out on the James River fishing one of the creeks. And I had to pick up the trolling motor because we were spitting up mud and we were catching 1.5-pound crappie in 2 foot of water. And so it's hard to see it on live scope when you're doing that. That's where that spider rigging comes into play.
That's a great segue because I think we got Angela. We got Angela. My God, what is with me today? Angela, thank you. English is my second language. We got Angela Williams. Do you have to have live scope in your initial setup in order to fish and or place in the crappie tournament? Because I just butchered English, please message me on Facebook, Instagram, or you can email me fishingthedmv@gmail.com and you can get a gift card to Jake's Bait and Tackle. That's an interesting thing about the live scope in tournaments right now, because I think, just to add to her question, there are some tournament trails that say no live scope, correct, nowadays?
It's interesting how it started out.
Yeah, I mean, because when I started fishing in the Richmond Crappie Club, I didn't have the live scope.
Oh, wow.
And we won a couple of tournaments without it, but I would say that it is definitely an advantage. And some of your clubs are going to have non-live scope bracket and a live scope bracket, so you're only competing against people with or without the live scope. If I don't have it, I'm not competing against guys who do, so they work it out. But it is definitely a huge advantage when it comes to tournament fishing.
With that being said, the national crappie trails, you got a couple different trails. You got American Crappie Trail, you got Crappie Masters, there's National Crappie League. Crappie Masters had a tournament in Florida in January, I think it was last year. And the team that won, it was two guys that didn't have, I don't think they had a fish finder on the boat.
Uh-oh.
The rods they were using were essentially cane poles, and they were dipping lily pads.
That's cool.
And they won the tournament. Now, they had the history on that body of water, and I don't think they could go to Bugs Island right now and do the same thing. You know, so it really depends on the time of the year and how those fish are holding and what they're holding on to.
Gotcha.
The advantage that you have. This time of the year, I'll tell you personally, I don't think I could compete as well as we've done without live scope. I mean, I was crappie fishing a year and a half, 2 years before I got it, so I was just starting to like really learn the patterns, and I got it, and I catch myself using it as a crutch too often. I put the trolling motor in the water and start looking rather than thinking, where should these crappie be today?
What for people that are trying to get into crappie fishing but they don't have the scope? I mean, what are some pointers that you could give them really as we get into the late February, March time of the year?
If it was me, I would go to spider rigging, like you saw my set at different depths. I would try, you know, on my creek channels, river channels, main lake points, and like you say, you know, try to figure out. If you didn't have the live scope, just figure out if you can figure out with a side scan or something like where your bait is or your down scan, what level your bait's at, and I would start hunting just above. If that bait wants to be at 25 feet, I would set my baits down there at 24 feet and start easing around your points and easing around, trying to stay around channel swings and creek channels and river channels.
What are your top 3 lakes in the area just to catch a crappie? It doesn't have to be the biggest citation, but like if you want to take somebody and just get into it, that they can have success.
Probably for me, I would say James River, Chickahominy River, Bugs Island.
2 titles and a lake. Wow, interesting.
The 2 rivers have a lot of crappie, and it's, I don't think it's as specific for the time of the year as a lot of the lakes are. On these tidal rivers, I think you can go to the same areas, and the fish may move a little bit, but if you find them in a particular section of a creek, I think you could catch them there in the summer, and you can catch them there in the winter. I don't think they move as much as the lake fish.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. Have you guys fished the res before, Aquan Reservoir?
Aaron Ball keeps trying to talk me into coming up there. At some point, I'm going to.
McCluskey, I had him on my show. He threw back the state record white crappie by accident.
I heard about that.
I mean, I saw a picture of that thing. Jesus God, that thing had a mouth on it. And it swallowed like, it was like a mega bass +1. I mean, it's insane how big that damn thing was. And he took a picture and weighed it and threw it back. And then Odenkirk called him and was like, "You're an idiot. That was this new state record." So I'm assuming there's more like that in there. And I'm wondering like how many small lakes like that haven't been hit by like pro crappie anglers to actually exploit that. Same thing with like largemouth fishermen. They get to get some of these smaller lakes.
Yeah, I think electric only lakes have more big fish that are easier to catch than elsewhere. There's a few places not too far from here where it's like I always worry about those places get burned a little bit because of how many people. Once you find out about it, it's like some of those areas and some of those key spots get hit pretty hard. And that's one thing I'll segue into as well. That the thing that worries me a little bit with live scope with crappie fishing is crappie have historically been a pan fish. You know, and that's how I started. It was like if you catch a crappie, you're taking it home, you're cooking it.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting with bass fishing. It's like if you post a picture on Facebook of a bass on, you know, that you're getting ready to fillet, it's like you'll be cursed. You know, so I'd like to, for me, for crappie, I really like a 12-inch crappie is perfect. The size of fillet that you get, but I throw back all the crappie that are over 14 inches unless it's like gut hooked and not going to make it. You know, so I hope that others will start to do the same, especially as more people start crappie fishing. Right. Throw those trophies back. You'll catch them again. I've caught the same crappie multiple times.
It's culture, and I've talked about this on this show a bunch with SAV, where you got people that just think it's a weed and you got to kill it, and you got to change that culture. And what happened with bass fishing when Ray Scott said like we're going to go to, you know, releasing what we catch, that took 50 plus years maybe to get that to sink in. And now I think we've gone too far to the other end of the spectrum where, like you said, man, you know, you get cursed like the devil if you keep one. And we got to find that middle ground. And crappie fishing, I feel like, can swing the other way a little bit to where, yeah, you got to, especially with scope, because it's interesting to know how much live scope will affect the population when it's basically catch and take culture. Does that affect the population, you think, more than like a species like a bass where they want to put them back?
Well, I wonder one thing, you were asking about how do the crappie tournaments work. So Richmond Crappie Club, when I started, I know a handful of folks that fish out of a kayak or really small john boat or just a trolling motor, 9.9. So I told them, I didn't want them to have to worry about keeping a crappie alive. So I said, as long as you're keeping the fish to eat, you can keep whatever you're legally allowed to keep, and we'll weigh the fish in dead or alive. All right, that's just for the Richmond Crappie Club. But now we're getting more anglers, and anglers are getting a lot better too.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm seeing how many fish that are taken and how many are being kept. I may have to revisit that rule in the future, just because, I worry if we're going out and people are catching and keeping 30, 40 fish per boat. We have 14, 15, 20 boats.
That's taking a lot of fish away. Yeah.
That's a lot of fish, depending on the reservoir place you're at, too. I mean, that's the big thing. I mean, hunting around reservoir probably won't be able to take the pressure as cur probably could. But, yeah, I've always been fascinated about that. And also, when it comes, that's the one side, and I've talked about this with Benarski of the DWR about regulations with with fish that you keep. But also the technology side of things. Live scope techniques came from crappie fishing. Scoping techniques came from crappie fishing. Trolling motor brakes, apparently that's a thing now. That's a crappie fishing thing. What are some interesting things that you see that bass fishermen haven't clued into? And it doesn't have to be big secrets, but just common sense things that you guys do nowadays.
Well, one thing I wanted to bring up, if somebody wants to get good with live scope or any forward-facing sonar for bass fishing, right now is the time to do it, in January and February. And I think crappie fishing is your segue to get into it. I think catching crappie with live scope is a lot easier than catching bass with live scope. Right? And I've tried both, and it's just a success rate. And I look at some of these national crappie guys, they'll talk about going out and being able to catch 100 crappie in a day in January, just suspended fish, and they'll go out and try the same thing with bass fishing. They'll catch 6 or 7. Now, some of the fish that they're catching are really big, but this time of the year, when the water's cold, the crappie aren't moving a whole lot, so it's pretty easy to set up and drop down on them. And once you learn that technique, I think you can get a lot better. You can segue that into bass fishing and how that plays into it.
Yeah, and the bass seem to slow down as well when it's a little bit colder. That's a hard one to get in front of. If you're swimming a straight line, that'd be one thing, but they swim all over the place and chasing, so it's kind of hard to keep up with them with the forward-facing sonar. Whereas he's talking about the crappie, just when it's real cold, they'll almost just be sitting in the water column, not hardly moving at all. And the bass aren't moving much faster, but they do seem to be a little bit trickier to get in front of. And stripers are even worse. They really are moving around a lot. So, but I think to start with the crappie, so you get used to seeing your bait and seeing the fish and then the distances. That fish is 60 feet in front of my boat. Well, if you're just getting started with it, you don't know where 60 feet is until you cast it. Oh, well, that was 55 feet. We'll try again. Oh, that was 50 feet. Now I've hit 62 feet. Now I'm going to get in front of the fish. Well, the whole time that fish is moving, so it's a whole lot of variables involved in trying to get in front of that fish. But I think the forward-facing sonar is going to be a major player in largemouth fishing too. It's really coming a long ways here in a little bit of time. So
it's interesting too. I was listening to one of your podcasts when you interviewed Trent down at Bugs Island. So this year he's dominating Bobcat's crappie trail. I think in the first 3 tournaments, he's top 2 or top 3 in all 3 of the tournaments.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like everybody's known him as being like an elite bass angler down there. And then now he's an elite crappie fisherman down there. And so I think he kind of went about it a little bit backwards of learning the bass side of it and then going back saying, well, I can do that crappie fishing too.
That dude probably has also every stump and rock marked in that damn place too, which kind of helps.
Probably so. It's interesting too with you talk about bugs, how many different patterns you can find.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spill his beans, but he's doing some of his techniques and some of the tournaments that we've placed in. He's doing something completely different than us. Completely different water depth, completely different type of rod style. Everything's completely different.
When it comes to boat control, I've always thought spot lock and power poles are the 2 technologies that people don't praise enough because it's boat control. You can lock it in. But with forward-facing sonar, it's kind of gotten rid of spot lock. So many people have to use the trolling motor shaft. Do you think the turrets are a thing that's more of a gimmick, or do you think that's going to become more of a mainstay?
I think it's gonna be a main thing. You're talking about the crappie brakes, right?
Crappie brakes, the turrets that you can have next to the Ford. So instead of using your foot pedal to move live scope, you have the turret next to it with a button. So
Right.
both, it's a two-part question: the crappie
Right.
brakes and like having the turret.
Definitely. Going to be a game changer. I'm actually getting ready to put one on the boat I'm building now. Put that turret on there because with boat control, I'm tired of coming off the fish to get the boat.
Especially when
back
it's
and
windy,
forth.
it's annoying as hell. It
You ain't
really
kidding.
is.
It really is very frustrating. Yeah.
And then with the crappie brakes, how many more batteries are we gonna need on our goddamn boat? I'm swear, I'm at a 5-bank Minn Kota Charger, and now I'm like, I really wish they made a 6.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like,
Yeah.
how much do you guys have those on your boats? And if so, like, how much juice does that take?
I do not.
So I just bought a new to me boat a week before Christmas, and so it has the power poles and it has drift paddles. So I don't know if you've heard of those. Have you heard of the drift paddles? Mm-hmm. Okay, it's got those on it. Doesn't have the crappie brakes, and I was being asked whether or not I want to put those on. I'm hoping I'll be happy with the drift paddles. Most of the time, I'm trying to go into the wind if I'm trying to like follow a creek channel or whatever it may be. And that way, if I'm going into the wind and I see a fish and I need to slow down, the wind will push me back a little bit. Now, there's been so many times I had a bass boat. Now I'm going to an aluminum boat. The bass boat so heavy, when I would start trolling towards a fish, and the boat would just keep drifting and keep drifting. And how many times that messed us up and run over top of a fish. So, I mean, it's funny going down to, when we went down to Grenada, when Ryan and I went down there, there's just so many things that you see on the boat where it's like, that's an advantage, that's an advantage, that's an advantage. And then you total that cost up, and it's like, well, what are my goals? What are my expectations?
Right.
I mean, it's so funny, the cliches. Every fishing commercial you see is the dumb redneck in a camper somewhere, but it's like, it's a $100,000 truck, it's a $100,000 bass boat. That is not the case anymore.
No, sure.
To be competitive. I mean, like that Icon boat, I mean, it's like $150,000. It's insane how it keeps blowing up, but it's so much fun. It really is. And I know you guys got a lot to do today. Thanks for coming on the show, but make sure I want you guys to plug, your tournament organization and whatever booth that you're helping out in today.
We're helping out with Dance and Sporting Goods, and they have they got some of the Nick Taylor jigs over there, the ACC crappie sticks, and they have been they've been our sponsor for the last couple of years. So we came down to help the guys out. They also sponsor the Richmond Crappie Club, which Josh started and just got it going and does an excellent job with it. So
awesome.
Yeah, I'll say the plug with Dance Sporting Goods for me. I mean, there's a lot of great companies here, a lot of great rods, a lot of great baits and everything. The thing I like about Dance Sporting Goods is the people that work there. When I walk in, I talk to Walter, I talk to Steve, I'll talk to Chase. I'm talking to the guys that I know. And if there's something that you want to get into and you don't know a lot about, and like a lot of people don't know a lot about crappie fishing, if you go in there and say, hey, I'd like to try it, I think it'd be fun to take my kid, what should I get? They're gonna walk you around the store and say, if I were you, I'd get this, here's another option here. If I were you, I'd get this, here's another option here. And they'll show you exactly what you need to do. Just customer service, fantastic. With that being said too, talking about crappie fishing, I'm telling you, if you're not crappie fishing right now, you should be. I think I've got a bunch of buddies that have kids. I don't have any kids of my own, but when kids go fishing, you can tell like the number one deterrent for them from fishing is not having success. Amen. And a lot of these bass guys, if you take a kid fishing, it's like, hey, look, we're gonna get 1 bite per hour, and it's gonna be a 3-pounder. They might get bored pretty quick. I think your better 100%. Chance is to say, hey, we're gonna go crappie fishing, and we're gonna fish for 2 hours, and then we're gonna go do whatever, and we're gonna catch 50 fish. And we may catch 1 or 2 bass that might be 3 or 4 pounds. Now they're hooked. They're like, hey, let's try doing that.
Yeah,
I want to do that again. Jeff can speak on that topic too.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I came up. I have a son who's in his 30s now, but when he came up, I about ruined him in fishing, going out smallmouth fishing. I came up smallmouth fishing. Well, I was young. And it's like, no, we're out here. We're going to fish, and when I catch, he's getting bored. Kind of ruined. He's come back into it now. It's great, but. Yeah, there's a one that the kids need to catch fish, and you need to know that you're going to be on a set schedule. It's like, you're not going out to fish 8 hours with a kid. You might be going out there to fish 15 minutes with a kid, or you might be going out to fish 2 hours with a kid. So being able to get them on get on the fish and catch some fish and leave while it's still entertaining to them. out there.
No, I 100% agree with that. I mean, Jeff, Josh, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, Richmond Crappie, link will be in the episode description, especially on the re-upload. Again, guys, the live stream will still be available. You can re-watch, unlike Monday Night Lives that I shut down so I can re-upload them. This will be available if you want to watch, but it'll be re-uploaded again as a podcast episode on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, and YouTube the first week of February, and then that one will have all the links layered into it, since today is absolutely crazy for me. Anything else you guys want to plug before we get out of here?
No, I'm good.
Nothing good. I appreciate your podcast.
Absolutely.
Your podcast is awesome. I've learned a lot in listening to all the bass fishing tips and tricks and stuff like that. I really appreciate you doing this. I feel like talking about a necessity, Richmond Crappie Club in the area, I feel like your podcast is a necessity for people to learn.
Thank
and
you so
expand.
much, and then I'm definitely going to be in contact with you guys so I can get you guys in more of a good rotation, or even if the winners want to kind of come on too, you can get me in the loop when the tournaments are so I can ask them or offer them the chance to get on as well, because I do want to branch out to different species, not just to be bass, because there's so much in this area. I mean, hell, it's not even counting the saltwater, which is another big thing people ask me. It's such a cool area. But then, guys, so this is the plan. We are going to take a 10 to 15 minute break. We're going to come back with our last session of the morning before we do the meet and greets. So we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then I'll be seeing you guys a little bit later. Talk to you in about 10 minutes.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Alrighty, how's everybody doing today? So basically, just want to make sure I keep everyone in the loop about what we got going on. So we have a quick change to our regular scheduled programming because of trying to get everyone the best content possible and to be able to be here to serve everyone. Let me pull that up. There we go. So I'm going to show you the new updated schedule for today. The new updated schedule for today. Let me get this up here. So, the new updated schedule for today that we're going to put out live for Saturday's schedule live streaming. We are going to go live streaming. We have from 1 p.m. we have the Casting Kids Championship. The Casting Kids Championship is at 1 p.m. We're going to be live streaming 4 p.m. till close, meet and greet 10 a.m. to noon, and then 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Okay, so the meet and greet is going to be 10 a.m. till noon now. Then from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. we'll take a break at noon. We will also sprinkle in some last-minute live streams when we can. If you guys don't know, it's just me and my wife here this week, and we are actually getting a lot of fun with people that want to say hi. So that's kind of the way we're going to be doing this now, is meet and greet now, live streaming in the afternoon when it's not as busy, okay? So if there's anything else people want me to see, just let you know. I'm going to leave the live stream up, okay? The live stream I'm going to leave up so people can find this and know, and I'll put this out on social media, but right now that's kind of the game plan. So the live streaming will begin again at 1 p.m.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
First time fishing. Oh my goodness. Alrighty. All right, so we were going to take a break. That was an absolute abject lie. We are not taking a break right now. Let me pull that right there, lock that down. Perfect. Guys, so we are back. Sorry for telling everyone I was not doing anything for a little bit. This is a guy I've been wanting to get on forever. He's on my to-do list. Please, if someone would like to be a free secretary, please reach out to me because I need help. I am dying. We got Travis Luger in the studio. Travis has been on the show a couple of times. He's been fishing Bass Opens. He's been fishing the Elite Set. He's done everything in Virginia. Travis, how have you been doing? It's been a long-ass time since you've been on the show.
Been doing good, man. Just doing some fishing here and there, more or less planning a wedding than fishing.
Congratulations.
So,
that's awesome.
Thank you.
When is the big day?
It's in the end of April.
Oh, my God. That's coming up.
Yeah.
So where are you guys going to be getting married?
In North Carolina.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So fishing-wise this year, it sounds like that's a big deal. I get that. You got to keep everyone happy. What are your plans then going into next year?
Well, next year I'm fishing that new Elite 70s Apex series because, one, let's be honest, Steve Camp runs one of the best tournament trails in the state, and I think that new Apex series is going to be a whole lot of fun.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Or Alpha Series. I said Apex, but Alpha Series. My fault.
There's two series. Like, for people that don't know, what was the initial Elite 70s and what is this new trail that's going on?
So the initial Elite 70s is a team series. You got you and your partner, 70 guys, 75 guys, normal team series stuff. The new Alpha Series is going to be a solo trail. I think this year it's going to be 80 guys or something, and it's literally just a solo trail. You pay your money, you go fish by yourself, nobody else in the boat with you. Payouts are what everyone's looking for. I think it's a trail that Virginia has been missing for a long time.
I like the idea of just doing all this kind of the solo trails and things like that. Especially, I think ABA is also is doing something like that as well, a solo trail. And part of it is, and I've been getting caught slack for this, where it's like, I think co-angling is dead. I think at the higher end, it's getting so expensive to be a co-angler. And if you're paying for all the things as a boater, the entry fee, the gas and stuff, and especially with live scope,
live
and how you
scope's
fish,
taking co-anglers out of the game.
You don't want to have a co-angler. It's not to be mean or anything, but it makes your life so much easier.
Well, the only thing the co-angler's benefiting anymore is just being there to net your fish if you're allowed to net in that tournament. I mean, if you're live scoping out there, that guy's in no man's land. He's going to just sit there and just cast to nothing. So all he's really there for is paying to be your net man. I'm with you. I think it's going away.
Talk about your year prior, like the tournaments you fished and some of the success you had. I've been seeing some kind of your posts and everything. I mean, it looks like you had a really good season last year.
This year I had a pretty good season. The spring started off right, January 1st of 2023. I won my first event of the year on Lake Anna.
Dude, congrats.
And then after that, it was, just stayed steady in the top 10s. Just couldn't get another win really the rest of the year. But cash checks almost every tournament, so I can't complain about that. And just went all around. Went Tennessee, went Douglas Lake for a little bit for a couple tournaments, and did cash checks in both of those, and then came home, and then just been fishing some local stuff after that. Got down on Bugs Island this fall and had a lot of fun and had really good success. Bugs is turning around. That place is getting some really big fishing, and I'm really excited to see the future for it.
It's getting a lot better. I mean, I really feel like that bass virus, that big fish kill they had, it's really starting to come back. And it's got a long way to go because it's such a big lake. The population really has to bounce back to see that effect, but you're seeing it now.
Yes, we're starting to see it, and I think North Carolina's doing and nothing against Virginia. They're doing a great job with their fisheries too. But North Carolina's been doing their program to put the F1s in like Lake Gaston, Lake Norman, places like that. And I hear rumors they're going to try to start putting them in Bugs in the next couple of years.
Good.
And if they do that, that'd be awesome. I think the lake needs it. The herring is making that lake, like the fish are just getting fat, especially on that lower end of the lake. The upper end, you still got your bluegill eaters and stuff, but they're getting big. I was on the upper end most of the fall, and we were catching big ones like every day. You could almost bet every day I was catching a 5-pounder somewhere on the lake, which you used to not see that.
No, you did.
10-pound limits were like the thing. 9-pound limits were the thing. Now you're seeing a lot of tournaments. To get a check, you better have 14, 15.
Yeah.
It's getting better.
It's creeping up slowly. I mean, and there will be people in the comment section still saying like, well, the weights are low, but you're starting to see it slowly. I mean, most of these lakes, guys, it's not going to be overnight you're catching 30 pounds. It's a slow crawl getting those weights back up there to where you're seeing it at Lake Anna and everything.
Yep.
Are you ever thinking about doing guiding or anything like that in the future at some point?
I would love to get into guiding. I don't know if I'd ever guide for bass because I do all the tournaments, but I do a lot of crappie fishing too, and I would love to guide for crappie or striper and stuff like that, but that might be something in the future. We'll see.
What, if people want to follow you, really to follow your whole journey, where can they find you?
Find me on Facebook at Travis Luger Fishing. You can find me on Instagram I don't remember my name for Instagram. I don't get on it that much, not going to lie. I'm terrible about social media, but you can find me mostly on Facebook at Travis Luger Fishing, and go follow me and do stuff like that and see how this year goes.
Right on, right around. I'm glad I could pull you out from the crowd. I'll let you get back to your day,
yes,
Travis,
sir, Thomas.
but thank you
good
so
seeing
much.
You. Thank you.
It's good seeing you too. All right, guys, we're just going to keep the ball rolling here. So, as always, like I said before, I'm going to be dropping down this episode. We're going to be cutting down this live stream, and we'll be starting back up here in a little bit. Again, I'm going to post this on social media and everywhere else where we're going to be going, but I will see you guys a little bit later. Ciao.